why you're making The Passion of the Christ, just to show you the power of the enemy trying to stop that movie from coming out.
The Passion, well, I was struck by lightning.
The Passion of the Christ stirred both awe and outrage, and no one felt its impact more than Jim Caviezel, who portrayed Jesus.
And but they didn't want to let out that it was a passion movie about Jesus, so they sent me a script.
After over a decade of silence, he's finally speaking out. Now, 11 years later, Jim reveals what really happened behind the scenes and how the role changed his life forever. Could his truth rewrite the story we thought we knew? Stay with us as we uncover the stunning revelations that might just silence the critics once and for all. Jim Caviezel finally breaks silence on the Passion of the Christ. After 11 years of keeping much of it to himself, Jim Caviezel is now opening up about what really happened behind the scenes of The Passion of the Christ, a film that changed his life forever. Making this movie and going through the entire journey of bringing it to life, Caviezel reflects, we realized something powerful. If we had done it on a safe, controlled movie set, you never would have seen the same performance. The truth is, the performance was born out of real pain. It hit me hard right from the beginning. On the very first day, Caviezel separated his shoulder. I remember thinking, God, are you watching this? We're trying to make a movie here. I'm just an actor, and you're allowing all these terrible things to happen. Caviezel had one hope for the film's message, that when people sat in those theater seats, they would see themselves as God sees them, not how we usually see ourselves. That's the truth of who we are. He goes on to reveal just how far the suffering went. During filming, I was scourged, whipped, and it wasn't fake. It was real. While carrying the cross, my shoulder dislocated again. I had lost a huge amount of weight, starting at 210 pounds and dropping down to around 168. I was so sick I couldn't stop throwing up. Both of my lungs filled with fluid. I had pneumonia. Most people don't know this, he continues, but after filming ended, I had to have heart surgery. And I was literally struck by lightning on the last day of shooting. That moment deeply changed me. Despite the intensity, Caviezel says there were moments of humor. We even joked about it on set, saying there were buzzers under the audience seats, and if someone felt something hot, just blame Jim or Jesus. Looking back on a particularly brutal scene, Caviezel recalls, in a moment, we're going to watch some clips, including the whipping scene. That part was rough. Mel made some last-minute changes that definitely didn't work in my favor. He explains, we hadn't really rehearsed the scourging scene. A metal plank was placed about a foot from my back. I stood in front of it, while the actors were supposed to aim their strikes at the plank, not me. 3 cameras were rolling. Mel was giving instructions, but the actors didn't speak English, and we didn't speak Italian, so everything had to go through his assistant translator. He told them to swing like a baseball pitcher throwing a fastball, but they didn't understand baseball. So then he said, okay, swing like in cricket. And that's exactly what they did, he says. They took a full swing, and instead of hitting the metal, the whip wrapped around and struck me directly, leaving a 14-inch gash down my back. I went down instantly, like a football player knocked breathless. Did it hurt? It was beyond pain. In that moment, I saw God. He confided in a friend, sharing his doubts. I told him everything. He said to me, Jim, God doesn't always choose the best, but he did choose you. So what are you going to do about it? Throughout the filming, Caviezel was in a deeply spiritual place. I was in a very deep spiritual state, praying constantly, meditating. I stayed in character from beginning to end. I believed the only way people could truly see Jesus in me was if I stayed rooted in prayer and fasting. The fasting part came naturally because I was so ill. By the end, while hanging on the cross, my body had actually started turning blue. That wasn't makeup, it was real. Between shots, they'd lower me down to rest. But every time they lifted me back up, my shoulder popped out of place again. He adds, "Behind me, there was a huge cliff. The cross would slam into it every time it was raised, snapping my shoulder out again and again, but by then I was in so much pain I could barely feel anything. Even his heart was failing. My heart was struggling too."
And the man put a stethoscope on my heart, and he said, "Mel, he can die." And at that point, Mel...
A man put a stethoscope to my chest and told Mel he could die. Mel, being a risk-taker, turned to me and asked, "Jim, what do you think?" I answered, "This is between me and God. I never felt good enough anyway." In that moment, Caviezel recalls, I was completely at peace. I told him, if I die making this film, I'm okay with that, because I believe people will be saved through it. Then came the final day of filming, an ending Caviezel will never forget. I was walking up a hill. Everyone, about 250 people, was already in place. Halfway up, I felt this dark, evil presence come over me. It whispered, "You're a dead man." But instead of fear, I felt joy. I thought, this is the best news I've ever heard, because if I die now, I know I'm going to heaven. Besides Jim Caviezel's powerful revelation, what other unforgettable moment defined his experience playing in The Passion of the Christ? Keep watching to find out. The mysterious moment. Jim had on The Passion of the Christ. It was a strange moment. The wind was blowing fiercely, and the clouds above were shifting and swirling. I felt as if I could leap up and actually touch them. It was a truly magical feeling. Beneath my feet, something was happening. The ground itself seemed alive, pulsing with energy that I could sense deep inside. As the wind howled around me, I glanced at the crowd. About 350 people gathered on the hill surrounding me. The wind was strong, but suddenly it vanished. The sound disappeared, and I felt the air being sucked away, like an invisible force pulling everything from around me. That moment lasted no more than 3 seconds, though it felt stretched, like 5 or even longer. Then, out of nowhere, I felt as if I was shot. I saw the back of my body, not the front, almost like I was outside myself, and then, suddenly, I was back. Yamakalini rushed over, and when I looked at him, I saw sparks flying from his hand. Another shot came down nearby. I was stunned, confused, and thought maybe I was heavily medicated or dreaming. My journey through this didn't end there. My first surgery took place in 2009 at Stanford. Then, in 2014, I had another surgery at the Cleveland Clinic that saved my life. At one point, I actually died on the operating table. I've never shared this before. Dr. Gillinoff and Dr. Griffin were there. They saw what happened and brought me back. By all odds, I wasn't meant to survive, but somehow I did. I share this because during that experience, I felt an overwhelming peace and love, something waiting for us after death. It was real, beautiful, and filled me with calm. I felt like I just had to hold on for a moment longer. Then, I saw everything happening around me. The doctors and nurses rushing, the chaos in the room. But it didn't hurt. The whole experience felt like cracking an egg open, the shell breaking free, and suddenly I was free from needing to breathe. I watched everyone running and panicking. They were scared, frantic. I saw it all. Then I saw them begin to close me up again, putting flaps on my body. That's when the pain returned. When I came back, I heard a horn sound. It wasn't painful, but it reminded me of the first time I met God. He called me closer, and I was wrapped in deep peace and love. In what ways did portraying Jesus in The Passion of the Christ impact Jim Caviezel's life? Stay tuned to find out. The role that transformed Jim Caviezel. Jim Caviezel opened up about how playing the deeply meaningful role of Jesus in The Passion of the Christ profoundly changed and challenged his life. The role allowed me to step into the shoes of someone who stood solely for good and was willing to make the greatest sacrifice to help others, even saving their lives, Caviezel told Jet Set magazine. It's incredibly humbling to take on a role with such weighty meaning, and I hope I have the courage in my own life to make the right choices when I'm tested. He recounted a powerful moment on the set that strengthened his faith even more. While filming The Passion of the Christ, I was not only struck by lightning, but I also dislocated my shoulder, he said. So there I was, being lifted up to hang on the cross. I had to take off the sling, and they were pulling my arms apart. I said, "Okay, God, this is the moment I need a hug to stay up here, because this hurts so much." And somehow, he really did lift me up because there was no way my shoulder could have held. I believed before, but after that brutal day, I became a true believer. Director Mel Gibson had warned Caviezel that portraying Jesus would change how Hollywood would see him. "Mel, this is what I believe," Caviezel responded at the time. "We all have a cross to carry. I have to carry my own cross. If we don't carry our crosses, they will crush us. So let's do it." The movie brought him a new kind of fame. You become more protective of your family and your time, and that affects your future work, because you've just acted in the most important biography ever. How do you top that? He explained. "I think some people in the film world struggle to figure out what to do with me after The Passion of the Christ," he added. "But luckily, I was able to work on films like Deja Vu with Tony Scott and Denzel Washington and the show Person of Interest. This helped people remember that before The Passion of the Christ, they liked me in The Count of Monte Cristo and The Thin Red Line, roles I did early in my career." Looking ahead, Caviezel is focused on making movies about hope and redemption. "The light shines brightest in the darkest places," he said, explaining why he gravitates toward hopeful roles. "In those dark places, I want to be the center. That's what draws me. I'm excited to keep making films that tell stories about characters finding some kind of redemption," he shared. "At this point in my career, I want the writing to be strong and the team to be excellent so I can keep growing too." Did Jim Caviezel's role in The Passion of the Christ launch him into greater fame, or did it cause him to face rejection? Stay tuned to find out. From Hollywood to rejection, Jim Caviezel's story. Jim Caviezel shared that when he was 19 years old, he experienced a powerful moment while watching a movie in a theater. A deep sense of peace came over him, and he believed that God was calling him to become an actor. After an injury ended his dreams of playing basketball, he began acting in theater productions in Seattle, Washington. He earned his Screen Actors Guild card by taking on a small role in the 1991 film My Own Private Idaho. Soon after, he moved to Los Angeles to pursue a full-time acting career. Reflecting on that decision, Caviezel said, "People thought I was out of my mind." In 1993, Caviezel was offered a prestigious scholarship to study acting at the renowned Juilliard School in New York. However, he turned it down in order to play Warren Earp in the 1994 film Wyatt Earp. He went on to make appearances in popular television shows such as Murder, She Wrote, and The Wonder Years, and also played a role in the 1997 action film G.I. Jane. Caviezel's big break came in 1998 with the World War II film The Thin Red Line, directed by acclaimed filmmaker Terrence Malick. Before landing the part, Caviezel met with Malick several times. He was so determined to join the project that he told his wife that if he didn't get a role in the film, he would quit acting altogether and return to Washington. In 1999, Caviezel portrayed Black John, a Missouri bushwhacker, in the American Civil War film Ride with the Devil. He was originally cast as Scott Summers, also known as Cyclops, in the 2000 film X-Men. Unfortunately, he had to step away from the role due to a scheduling conflict with the sci-fi thriller Frequency, which was also released in 2000. Despite that setback, Caviezel continued to land major roles. Jim Caviezel, best known for playing Jesus in Mel Gibson's 2004 blockbuster The Passion of the Christ, has since said that the role came with a steep personal cost. Once a familiar face on movie posters, Caviezel was widely recognized in Hollywood before he accepted the emotionally demanding role in Gibson's dramatic retelling of Jesus' final hours. He had led films like The Count of Monte Cristo and starred alongside Jennifer Lopez in Angel Eyes. However, speaking to a congregation at a church in Orlando, Florida, Caviezel revealed that he's been rejected by his own industry ever since taking on the role of Jesus. He recalled that after Mel Gibson offered him the part, the director called back just 20 minutes later to warn him. He said, "You'll never work in this town again," Caviezel recounted. "I told him, we all have to carry our own crosses." Caviezel explained to the church audience that Jesus remains as controversial now as he was 2,000 years ago, saying, "Not much has changed." A devout Christian, Caviezel told those gathered at the First Baptist Church of Orlando that he has made peace with the idea that sacrificing his acting career was a cost he was willing to bear. "We have to give up our names, our reputations, our lives, to speak the truth," he said passionately. While he called Gibson a horrible sinner, Caviezel urged people to respond with compassion rather than criticism. "Mel Gibson doesn't need your judgment, he needs your prayers," he stated. The Passion of the Christ went on to become a massive global success, earning over $600 million worldwide in 2004.
This film, released in 2004, took the world by storm, raking in over $600 million worldwide
and drawing large crowds of religious viewers. Still, the film sparked serious controversy. Some critics accused it of promoting anti-Semitism, with Jamie Bernard of the New York Daily News calling it the most strongly anti-Semitic movie made since the German propaganda films of World War II. Despite the difficulties during filming The Passion of the Christ, how did Jim Caviezel come to be cast in the role? Keep watching to find out. Jim Caviezel's Calling: The Untold Story Behind Playing Jesus. Mel Gibson gave Jim Caviezel a serious warning when they first discussed making The Passion of the Christ. Taking on the role of Jesus could seriously damage his career. Caviezel recalled that his initial meeting with Gibson's producer, Steve Caviezel, was actually about a surfing movie, but the script for that wasn't ready yet. About 40 minutes into their meeting, Gibson suddenly showed up. "We were talking about surfing movies and all that, and then the conversation shifted to Christ movies, you know, movies about Jesus. Well, that's not a surfing movie. It's not Jesus riding a surfboard. How's that supposed to work?" Caviezel shared with Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo on his podcast, Arroyo Grande, this past Wednesday. Caviezel reflected back to when he was 19 years old, a moment when he felt the voice of God speak to him, urging him to become an actor. "I said, 'Oh my God.' And I want to be clear, I wasn't disrespecting God or using his name lightly," he explained about the meeting with Gibson. "I honestly said, 'Oh my God,' "This is it." And I asked, "You want me to play Jesus, don't you?" Gibson's reaction was almost comical. He nearly swallowed his cigarette before coughing out a simple, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, I'm in." 2 days later, Gibson called him again, this time with a stark warning. He said, "Do you really want to do this?" Caviezel recalled, "If you make this movie, you might never work in Hollywood again." And I said, "What?" But Caviezel was resolute. "I wanted to show what really happened," he said. "So I was absolutely fine with that risk." What powerful moment in Jim Caviezel's life inspired him to grow and led him to take on the role in The Passion of the Christ. Stay tuned to find out. The day that changed everything. Jim Caviezel's path from pain to Jesus. I grew up in a situation where I had to ask myself, am I really going to love someone? My background wasn't perfect. It wasn't that picture-perfect Christian family people like to imagine. We had a lot of hard times. And going through those things, well, it shaped me in ways I didn't understand until much later. There was one day I'll never forget. I ran away from home. I took off down a frontage road, must have been about 10 miles. I didn't even have shoes on. It was cold, bitter cold. But there was this voice inside of me saying, "You can't hurt me. Nothing out here can hurt me, because the pain in my heart is already worse than anything else." I ended up at my best friend's school. His father opened the door. My feet were all torn up and bleeding, but I didn't even notice. I didn't feel a thing. I was just so full of anger. I walked inside and sat down. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. He just showed me love. He said, "If you ever go through something hard, if you're ever in pain, just come here." That was it. No preaching, no judgment, just presence. That man, he became one of the faces I thought about when I played Jesus. He was the first person who showed me what Jesus really looked like. Not someone pointing fingers, not someone keeping score, just someone who loves. That Thursday, the same week, he died. I was furious with God. I didn't understand how he could take someone like that away. I remember watching Jesus of Nazareth, Robert Powell's version. I've talked about this before. There's this scene where Jesus heals a blind man, and the Pharisees are angry because it's the Sabbath. Jesus spits on the ground, makes mud, puts it on the man's eyes, and says something like, "To those who can see, they will lose their sight. To those who are blind, they will receive sight." At that point in my life, I didn't understand the pain I was walking around with. But now, I get it. God let me go through those things because He was preparing me for something greater. If I hadn't known that kind of pain, I could have never played Jesus with the truth and the compassion the role deserved. You can't fake that kind of love. You have to live it. You have to bleed it. I'll tell you, when I was hanging on that cross in the film, cold, bruised, beaten, I heard the enemy whisper in my ear, "You're a dead man." And I whispered back, "Praise be to God." Because I knew that if this was my moment to go, I was going to meet Him. And maybe, just maybe, I'd finally get that chance. But if you ask me when I met the Lord, I'll tell you. It wasn't in a church pew. It was in pain. It was in the silence. It was in the mud and the blood and the freezing road. I've got brothers who came back from war. Some of them jumped on grenades. And you ask, do you love your country? You don't need to. The answer is in what they did. That's the greatest kind of love there is, to lay down your life for someone else. That's more powerful than anything I've ever done. But I believe God gave me a small chance to offer something of my own, to give a part of my life, my flesh and blood, for him. And I did it gladly, because he deserves that. I want him to know I love him. And look, I just want to say, I love that this is unscripted. Before we started, I said, let's just do this from the heart. No notes, no script, just real talk. And you said, let's do it. That means a lot to me. What I feel right now is the Spirit moving. I really do. And I want people to understand, when you go through something terrible when you're young, when you're betrayed, when you're hurt, it doesn't mean God abandoned you. Sometimes it means He's preparing you. God wounds deeply those He plans to use greatly. And that's what happened to me. The pain didn't break me. It became the very thing I now use to love people, to show them grace, and to reflect Christ's love. After hearing Jim Caviezel's revelation about the Passion of the Christ, let's take a deeper look at what the movie truly means. The Passion of the Christ, a controversial vision of faith. The Passion of the Christ is a 2004 American epic biblical drama film co-produced and directed by Mel Gibson, who also co-wrote the screenplay alongside Benedict Fitzgerald. The film features Jim Caviezel as Jesus of Nazareth, Maya Morgenstern as Mary, Jesus' mother, and Monica Bellucci as Mary Magdalene. It powerfully depicts the Passion of Jesus, drawing primarily from the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Additionally, the film incorporates religious traditions such as the Friday of Sorrows and devotional writings, including the visions attributed to Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. The narrative centers on the final 12 hours before Jesus Christ's death, commonly known as the Passion.
I just kept having visions about it, and about, what was that like 12 hours like? And what was that really like?
It opens with the agony in the Garden of Olives, also called Gethsemane, progresses through Judas Iscariot's betrayal, the brutal scourging at the pillar, Mary's foretold suffering as prophesied by Simeon, Jesus' crucifixion and death, and concludes with a brief portrayal of his resurrection.
That film, resurrects me. There is a cross.
Empowers you.
But there is no resurrection.
Interwoven with these pivotal moments are scenes from Jesus' earlier life, including the Last Supper and the Sermon on the Mount. Although Mel Gibson initially resisted the idea, the film is fully subtitled to aid viewer understanding. Upon its release, the film ignited considerable controversy and drew deeply divided responses from critics. Many praised it as a profoundly spiritual and moving experience, lauding the compelling performances, meticulous production values, and John Debney's evocative musical score. Conversely, others condemned it for perceived anti-Semitic undertones and its graphic, intense violence, which some found emotionally overwhelming. The film grossed $612.1 million worldwide, becoming the fifth highest-grossing film of 2004 internationally by the end of its theatrical run. The film's most significant shortcoming is not isolated to a single scene, but permeates the entire portrayal. Jesus Christ is traditionally understood as a symbol of love, hope, and kindness. His character should embody these qualities through themes of truth, redemption, and serving as a guiding light for humanity. Instead, Mel Gibson's depiction places heavy emphasis on pain, suffering, despair, and even hatred. A central critique of the film is its anti-Semitic undertone. This is especially notable given Mel Gibson's history of public controversies involving offensive remarks about Jewish people. The irony is profound, considering Jesus himself was Jewish, born into and died within the Jewish faith. This crucial aspect is largely neglected in the film. Rather than acknowledging this, the narrative implicitly frames the Jewish people as antagonists in Jesus' story. The movie is also marked by its extreme and relentless violence. Large portions depict Jesus being whipped, stabbed, beaten, and subjected to severe torture. Many critics felt that the level of violence crossed the line into excess, making the film seem more focused on shock value than on meaningful or insightful storytelling. Audiences reported intense emotional reactions. Some were moved to tears, others fainted, and there was even an account of a woman suffering a fatal heart attack during the crucifixion scene. The respected film critic Roger Ebert famously described it as the most violent film he had ever witnessed. Beyond the spotlight, who is Jim Caviezel really when the cameras stop rolling? Stay tuned to discover the real him. The personal side of Jim Caviezel. In 1996, Caviezel married Carrie Browett, a high school English teacher. Out of deep respect for his wife and strong religious beliefs, Caviezel avoids performing graphic scenes in his films. He once explained, "I do love scenes, but not the kind that involve unnecessary. I also don't take part in excessive violence, and it's not only because of my wife, although that matters a lot. It's because it's sinful, plain and simple. It's wrong." At his wife's request, he kept his shirt on and asked Jennifer Lopez to wear a top during a love scene in the film Angel Eyes, and he agreed to that boundary. He also declined to remove his clothes during a romantic scene with Ashley Judd in High Crimes. Caviezel and his wife have adopted 3 children from China, all of whom faced serious health issues at the time of adoption. Their first child, Beau, had been left alone on a train as a baby and later raised in an orphanage. When they adopted him in 2007, he had a large brain tumor that required several surgeries. Caviezel admitted he was completely terrified about adopting a child with a disability, but he felt strongly that God wanted him to go through with it. Later, when they were planning to adopt a second child, the agency suggested a healthy newborn. But during the process, they met a 5-year-old girl in foster care who also had a brain tumor. Believing the healthy infant would easily find a home, but the sick 5-year-old might not, they made the heartfelt decision to adopt her instead. Their third child was also battling cancer when they brought him into their family. Caviezel is a devoted Catholic. In a 2017 interview, he spoke about how central his Catholic faith is in his life, how portraying Jesus in the Passion of the Christ had a deep and lasting effect on him, and how much he feels connected to the Virgin Mary. During the filming of the Passion of the Christ in Italy, he sought spiritual support every day from a local Catholic priest. The priest offered him daily guidance, confession, and Holy Communion, with the help of an interpreter to ensure Caviezel fully understood every word. What's your take on Jim Caviezel's revelation? Do you think it was worth the long wait of 11 years to finally hear his story? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.